Okay, so first up is to wet the paper, sky only. So I've got some weird paper here, that Bao Hong, and heaven only knows what it's going to do because it's slightly rougher than I normally use, but you need plenty of water on, no puddles, but lots of sheen. I've got a puddle in the field. Lots of sheen, no puddles. Okay. And we'll take it nice and easy because it can get a bit fiddly. Okay, so bottom colour I'm going to have as a pink. I'm using quinacridone pink. If you've got alizarin crimson, that's fine. Just don't use it in a heavy mix. So brush quinacridone pink across that sky. We're not going for too much of a complex sky. Then I'm going to get some raw sienna, add that to the quinacridone pink. So I've got a coral, can't really colour them. And that goes in the next bit up. And then with a clean brush, damp, not too damp though, we're just going to blend that line so it doesn't, just puts a little bit more quinacridone on my brush. Then at the top, next up, we're just plain raw sienna. Just a band of that. And then at the top of that, you can either put a little bit of Payne's grey with a little bit of cobalt blue, just to give it a little bit more of a blue tinge. And that goes on the very top. Just take your brush over a couple of times. Then with a clean brush and a little bit more raw sienna, just go over where it joined. And a clean brush, find that coral again that you made. Again, do the same. And then lastly, clean brush some water, find the pink or the alizarin crimson. If you look as if you've got a lot of a heavy line anywhere, just use a bit of paint and go over it. I've got bands and I don't need bands, so this is where I just whisk my brush across and at the top there. I hope that dries reasonably. I'm also just going to put a little bit of the pink where the lines meet the horizon, because that will make it look misty. Just a little bit of pink and plenty of water. Now I'm going to do this little cloud here. So I'm using the rigger whilst it's still wet. I'm using some Payne's grey, and I'm using the brush on the side and wiggle it up and down, push it along Look what's happening to my brush. It's killing it, really. Make it wider on the right and tailing off. Go to, I don't know, go halfway or just over halfway. And I'm just going to took a bit more paint and just and then I'm just putting a little cloud in at the bottom there. Because really, if I was painting the vineyard as it is today, I would just have a grey sky and maybe a little bit of rain somewhere. No snow. Oh, that's drying off nicely. So we'll just do the bottom bit now. So take your raw sienna. You need a puddle and all over the paper. Try not to get too close to that pink at the top and the sky. And I'll just light mix all over the paper. Hopefully there's a little bit of that pink showing through at the top. If not, give it a helping hand and just drop in a tiny bit more. So it turns into the raw sienna, but there's just a little bit at the top there. Right. I've got a little thing, so that's it. Got it off. Now we need it. Oh, no, we don't. The last thing before it dries is to mix some green. I'm using a very light green, which is yellow phthalo. And I'm just going to dot some along that horizon because there's some bushes in the distance. And I'm just going to take the Payne's grey and dot that into, because sometimes there's a little bit of a shadow. So with the rigger, just touch and pull and touch and dot and dash. And they're not really there, they're just about there, I suppose. It's all, I don't want them to show up too much. And then we need to dry that because the rest is done wet on dry. I'm going to take a bit of that green, that light green, and I'm going to put some dark green in it. And I'm going to just paint where the lines go. This is the shadow. So I've got 5 lines, and it's very, and this is the one that has got the 2 lines. in one gap, if you see what I mean. Maybe just give it a little bit of a soften. So I'm just using the damp brush and just softening it off. And this one as well. So we don't need hard edges, so soften it off with a damp brush and wiggle it round and round in circles. That's that. I think it's now entered its ugly stage, which is fine. Now I'm going to use a rigger, which is like that. You could use, if you've got one of these, you could use that and do it like that, or you could use a thin round brush if you've got a thin round brush. That's my smallest round brush, and I think that that might be a little bit big. We'll have a go. And we want that light green again. Now, if you haven't got a light green, mix some yellow with it, and you with your dark green, and you've got light. And starting over on the left, we're going to, there's your post here. So I shall want some of the vines sticking up, and then I'm almost dobbing and pushing it in, and I'm not going right to the end. Have some go up in the air, because grapes at the moment, they're just about pruning them, but at the moment they're sort of sticking long fronds up in the air. Then with the liner, get plain dark green and touch the bottoms of the where you've just put in that light green, all the way, not all the way down, so because you've got some in shadow. You could also just do a few of the others just coming up, you know, on the bottom side of them, so that they stand out. And that is one row of grapes. Like I said, I just want a little bit to go up in the air, because they're really wayward at the moment. The farmers are out cutting them. And then they look like little neat rows of hedges in the field. They're all pruned and beautiful. So obviously that front one by the post is going to be the biggest on each of the line, and we get smaller as we go further back. Checking to see whether those dark paint strokes are dry. What we'll do is, because they're not quite, going to just paint the fence post. So I'm using the light brown. Come down to the bottom. It's all right, you can touch that green, it doesn't matter. And we'll put the shadow on it later. I might as well do this next one. So with the, I think it's raw umber, this one. Just painting the posts. And this one, raw umber. And the last one. We're going to put shadow on. Next. So you've just got flat posts. Then with some dark brown, if you've only got light brown, put some Payne's grey with it. And lo and behold, you've got a dark brown. My sun is going to come from the left, as it does in these ones here. So the dark side of the post, as opposed to the dark side of the moon, will be on the right. So we'll leave that one. I'm just doing a line down, and because it's still wet, it's bleeding into the raw umber, which is exactly what I wanted. And all of a sudden they look like posts. So as you can see, the grapes are floating and they have stalks. So every so often, pull a stalk down from the grape down to that line of the green. They're not straight. They grow all sorts of funny shapes. So put kinks in them and that's it. And you've now got grapes attached to the earth. Now that's all there is to it. We just do this another 4 times. So when you've all caught up, so we've done the rest of the vines, the lines of vines, and now we're going to do a little bit, do the farmhouse in the distance. With this, we want some raw sienna and with a little bit of burnt sienna in it to make the roof. And I'm going to have it over here. I'm only just going to have it poking up above the hedge there. So I'm drawing a roof. It's like that. And it's back of its roof. And then I want a bit taller one. So pointing the same way, roof. That's it. And already we think, oh yeah, there's a house over there. In fact, there's a house and a barn, perhaps. And we don't really need to do much more. Just going to get a little bit of Payne's grey, very weak, and thinking where the sun's coming from, which is from the left. So this gable end and this one are going to be, and the wall are going to be in shadow. So we've just put a shadow in, and now we're going, oh yeah, can see which way they're pointing. And I'm going to put one of those, the tanks, the fermentation tanks, in next door to this house here. So I've used Payne's Grey again, and I'm just doing basically a cylinder. It's all behind the hedge, so I think it can come just a bit taller. And the left-hand side, you can lift a little bit of colour off it because they're aluminium. No, they're not, they're steel. And they shine. So that would be quite light on the left side. And quite dark on the and we just need to give a couple of windows. So again, I'm only just one window each. A shadow line under the eaves, which is Payne's Grey, and very gently just pull the shadow across. Shall we give them a chimney? Do you think it's going to be cold enough for a chimney? I do. Little chimney, she says. Come on, I'm using Payne's Grey for my little chimney. And just darkening the shadow on the houses. And I'm going to get a little bit of darker green than I used for the hedgerow to start with. And with my brush, my liner, I'm pushing it along like we did before. Not following the line totally, the very light one. But, so you've got a bit of more definition in the hedge. Now, French farm houses always have trees around them. Well, mostly. So with that dark, with the green again, I'm just going to do a little bit of, with the brush, push it down and wiggle it. Wiggle it and just do some crowns of trees. We'll do this, the trunks later. And maybe some over here. Okay, it's sort of a mid-green, and I'm just on the side and I'm wiggling the brush. It's not too wet, and the paper is just taking away what it wants of the paint. There we are. Floating trees. We also need to put a few trees in over this side. They're not very well defined, but so the same thing. Start it above that hedge that you can just about see. They're sort of in the mist, a bit like the gorillas, really. That's probably in. Oh, no, no, let's have one over here. So on the side, and wiggle it. Let the paper and the paint do the work. I'm just going to join that one next to the farmhouse up to the farmhouse, because I don't want a trunk there. There we are. And I'm not going to put trunks on these because as you look at them, they look as if they're in the mist and far away, and we don't need anything holding them up. Do I want them holding this up? This one over here? Yeah. So very light and just a light trunk. That's all you need. Just to going over that there, and now it's too dark. So I'll blot it off. Okay. And now we need some shadows, and the light's coming from the left. So we need some shadows. Shadows are a bit mauvey, a bit violet, a bit dark blue. And not green. So if you've got something like Moonglow from Daniel Smith, or a bit of Payne's Grey with some cobalt blue mixed in, that will do it, or some lilac mixed in. And we've got to be brave now and put the shadows in. Left slightly slanted, so it comes out that way. Joins on to the post itself. Now that looks a little bit dark to me, and so I'm just going to give it a block with some tissue. All right, so the next one, same. And then this one just comes round ever so slightly, not straight, but just a little bit. This one just comes round a wee bit more, not a lot. Going towards the left. And this one is a little bit more, still not straight though. Right. The green lines that we put in right at the start, they are actually the shadow lines for the vines. Really, I should have actually softened those down a bit because they're a little bit. I'll soften one side. So we did that shadow before we did anything else. And I'm just softening a bit, which is quite hard with one of these brushes. And that middle one there, I think it needs a bit of shadow there. Just going to do like we did the hedge the other side with a bit darker. So again, with the liner and some mid-green paint, wiggle your way across the page, just darkening slightly. That's better. And all we need is a bit of grass in front then. So light green. I'm going to put some light green. It's fairly thick. I haven't got a great deal of water on the corners there. I'm then going to mix some of the dark green in with the light green. So then we've got the next shade. In the corners. And then the dark green, which I'm actually making darker with some Payne's grey. Then with your fingernail or your little palette knife, pull the dark green through the light green in little flicky motions. And then you just do it lots. You have to do it before it dries. That's the only thing. So back to fingernail. Fingernail is a bit thicker. And then you could actually, if you want a damp brush, damp rigger, and just tease a few more grasses out. With a damp brush, so agitate it and pull and flick. If it starts getting a bit dry and you want your grasses to be a bit higher, put some paint on as well. If it's still wet, you could always stick some salt on. And if you've got some Doc Martens or some gouache or white acrylic, I'm just going to dot some. So we've got some little white flowers. Dot some in places. You could splat, but I've only just cleared up from the last lot of splatting I did. You could even do some yellow ones if you've got an opaque yellow. Cadmium yellow is opaque. You could put some buttercups in. If you put them down on the against the dark, it will show up better. And then the last thing is the birds. It's up to you whether you put birds in or not. I'm going to have, with a very gentle hand, I'm just going to have some ducks. And that's it. I'm just going to define those eaves on the houses. And the edge of the silo there, which is, as it's round and it needs shadow. And enhance that shadow line. I'm into faffing territory now. That's it, I think. Maybe a little bit more light green down that row there. It looks a little bit sparse. And I'll stop.